Nigeria, with an estimated population of nearly 200 million people, has about 108 million of this population without homes. The country's present housing deficit is estimated at a staggering 20 million units, requiring about 59.9 trillion naira to finance. Well, the World Bank recommends that Nigeria builds at least 700,000 housing units annually to keep up with growing population and urban migration. Unfortunately, the country barely builds 100,000 of such units per year. Well, to discuss ways of solving the Nigerian housing challenge is a real estate expert and certified management consultant, Oti Jonathan Idowu. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsday. Well, it depends on the statistics you're looking at, but most would agree that we have a housing deficit of between 17 million to 20 million units. What is the true picture of things, and how can we actually close this gap? Because despite the housing scheme by the federal government, the impact is negligible.
You're right. As it is, the rate of the deficit is around 20 million units as we currently see. But the point is, even closing of this margin has to come, but has been on for a while now, and it is majorly done by the people that are into real estate, both for residential purpose, commercial purpose, and all that. They have been working in closing this margin. But the demand is highly on increase. But a lot of problems, a lot of things has been in place, hindering people from actually achieving this closure.
Okay. With an estimated 108 million citizens without homes at the moment, the World Bank recommends that Nigeria should be building about 700,000 homes every year. Yet we are barely scratching the surface of 100,000 homes a year. Why is that? Can you help us to break down the reasons?
Well, the reason is not far-fetched. There are a lot of bottlenecks that has to do with the legislation. Like the problem of housing basically in Nigeria that is not making this possible. We have the problem of legislation, we have the problem of registration and titling of documents, then we have the problem of policy making. Now, let me take it from the angle of the legislation. The Land Use Act stipulates that every land belongs to the government, and because of this, a lot of people that would have been willing investors in the housing sector are shifting back because of so many bottlenecks surrounding it. Even it now needs to depend on the State House of Assembly and the National Assembly to pass a legislation that can correct this act. Now, if this act can be corrected, then even private individuals and investors can be able to work towards closing this margin. Now, if you look at also the bottlenecks with titling and registration, there are so many rigors involved. And you discover that it takes an average of 77 days with about 10% on charges, and also about 18% of works to be able to make this thing happen. So when you put this side by side, you discover that as much as we want to close this gap, these things are always serving as an edge. That's why up till now, it looks as if we are still scratching the surface.
All right. Let's talk about the ability of the people to afford these houses. Some have said that the houses being so built are not within the reach of the common man. What should be done to make it possible for people to have their own houses by way of affordability and terms?
Well, when you look at this is another part of the problem of the system, because there is of a truth, there are different forms of policies that have been put in place through the NHF, the private mortgage bank, and all that were meant to help people acquire these things. But when you also look at the cost of materials for building, it becomes very difficult to be able to give out something that is affordable. And you see many contractors are trying to minimize their costs, and therefore they are churning out buildings that are not up to standard. Now, a lot of these people, looking at our minimum wage at 30%, and the list of the building you can have is around maybe, say, 4.5 million. If you do the breakdown for someone to be able to pay this, to afford this kind of apartment, this kind of building, it can take the person a period of 20 years if he can be paying, let's say, 25,000 naira on a monthly basis. But the question is, how many people can actually take out this amount from their so-called income on a monthly basis? So if the government can at least try to help with the price of building materials that is on a high rise, it becomes easy to give something quality that is not too expensive, and given a period of time, people can actually be able to pay gradually and then become homeowners.
It almost sounds like a dream that may never come true for some people. I mean, when you just look at the reality you have painted. But you have also highlighted that the government is doing something, it's just not enough to close the housing deficit gap that we have. Looking at the financing for it, it is capital intensive. What would be your advice to the government? What should they be doing differently to create these more affordable houses for Nigerians?
Well, I think one of the things I discover about the government is there's no proper database of even its citizens. So when people eventually take a facility that can actually make this happen, it becomes a bit difficult for them to be able to follow up monitoring in terms of repayments. But basically, the government just need to be able to, if on their own part, increase the level of income of people, then create an affordable housing scheme that can give people a longer period of time to pay, say 25, 30 years. And when the mathematics is done and the breakdown is done properly, you discover that even if it has to be 10, 15,000 on a monthly basis, somebody can be on his way to become an homeowner. So flexibility of payment and all that can really help. Government can make this possible. And also, the government will need to assist private real estate developers that are willing to do this with funding so that they can actually make this possible too.
Well, many thanks to you, Jonathan Ido, a real estate consultant, for joining us today on Newsday to share your views on this topic.